Hello, my name is Tyler Mullen and I will be your guest speaker for today. So, I want everyone to take a minute to imagine that it is 1984 and before this, all the computers that you had seen either had like a black and white screen or, in the case of Apple, one that's full of green text. And all of a sudden, there was this commercial that came on during the Super Bowl that promised something from Apple that was going to be just innovative and world changing and was going to break all conformity forever. Anyway, so this the production of the original Macintosh had actually been in a planning stage for 5 years. And this was something that had started when Steve Jobs had visited a research facility that was owned by Xerox, and he was just fascinated by this machine that used pictures and windows and icons and like the pointer from the mouse to for everyday computing, and he knew that this was just going to be the thing that absolutely brought computers into the mainstream. Now, I just want to clarify that Steve Jobs was in many ways a genius from a business standpoint, but he didn't really have a lot of the technical knowledge that a lot of people at his level had. The original, the Apple and the Apple II computers were actually developed by his business partner, Steve Wozniak, who was much more the brains behind Apple at that point, and he actually wrote the programming language that Apple used before he had the prototype designed or a computer at all for that matter. And so this went on for quite a while because when they did the calculations of how much it would cost to ship, it came out to about $100,000. Yeah, something about that needed to change. And so there were eventually several things in production that happened. Like they had decided to cut the RAM down from what it was originally going to be, which Wozniak did not approve of at all. He felt they were dumbing down the machine and making it simpler just to appeal to a mass audience, which worked out for them well enough. But he wasn't too happy with that. But combined with being in a plane crash about 2 years into the production process, which was what caused him to leave Apple. So Jobs kind of took over at that point, and it eventually shipped for $2,500, which is just ridiculous, even for taking into inflation into account. And but you have to remember that this was technology that had previously only been available at universities, research facilities, laboratories, and it was on its way. Like, it was at its beginning to becoming a household appliance and something that would be in every family's home. So, because they were unsure, because they knew a lot of the public would be skeptical to this idea at first, it actually came to, there was actually a rent a Mac plan that came with the stores where people could could rent out the original Mac, or the Mac 128K as it was named for its RAM. But this plan actually turned out to be a failure because it was supposed to be like they could use it for, I believe it was 2 weeks, a month. Can't exactly remember off the top of my head. But by the time people could actually get a feel for it, it was, they were so damaged that it was actually damaged, and so many of them were unsellable. So there was a bit of a redesign that came on, whereas then there was the Fat Mac, which actually sold a lot better, and it was actually the same size. It was named because it had 4 times as much RAM. With that combined, there was a brief surge after their sales declined slightly after the Apple IIe after the Mac came out, but the late 80s, early 90s were actually not a really good time for Apple because competitions, Microsoft developing Windows and honestly improving it in many ways. Like the Mac had some features such as, say, Mac Paint, which was one of the first computer art programs, and it would have word processing, which and it had this its own printer to attach to it, but there were a few problems, like the printer. It didn't print out the fonts real well. Like one thing it rated was all the fonts it had available, and just how you could use all the ways you could use Word process documents in ways you wouldn't have been able to, especially not with the typewriter and not with the earlier computers. Not with earlier computers, and it was an innovation in that way, but it didn't. It had dot matrix paper, and that made it not print off too well. And that made it so it actually, despite the amount of innovation it had and as much of a step forward it was, and how much we can see it's changed through the fact that most people couldn't imagine a computer without a graphical user interface, and how it carries over to our phones. It was a huge innovation, but it actually didn't really sell that well after the first couple of years. This would later experience Apple would later have a resurgence with the iMac, but that wouldn't be till quite a while later. So yeah, that is the history of the Macintosh. Hope you enjoyed my presentation.